One of the greatest things about this hobby is finding a game that doesn't have a very big following and then finding that it's actually a great game and getting to tell people about it. Red Ronin is exactly that type of game. At the time of this recording, this game literally has less than 200 people following it on Steam, and yet it is an amazing little polished game. Sure, it's not a AAA title. Sure, it's not an indie GOAT type of game where it's a greatest of all time Hades or Bastion or Castle Crashers. It's not that level of game. But it's still an amazingly polished experience that has very great gameplay mechanics, and I think it's worth people's time to play. Red Ronin pitches itself as a turn-based strategic action game. The way I see it though is that this is a turn-based Hotline Miami. Both of these games have very similar graphic styles and very similar environments. They take place in very tight rooms, but in Hotline Miami, the gameplay is twitch-based. You have to actually run your character and quickly kill the enemies as fast as you possibly can, whereas in Red Ronin, you are taking turn-based approaches where you can stop and think about how you want to approach every enemy. In both of these games, you also play an anti-hero. In Red Ronin, you are a Ronin that goes from room to room murdering people, but they are the bad guys. A similar story takes place in Hotline Miami. But that is where the comparisons between these two games should both start and end. Red Ronin, aside from its themes, is a very different game than Hotline Miami. It just has a similar feel overall. For Red Ronin, the level progression is broken into chapters, and every chapter is a number of floors that you have to beat within a building. Each floor has a number of enemies and traps within that floor that you must navigate and kill without getting hit a single time. A single hit will get you killed. One catch to this gameplay is that you can't move a single square. You have to move an entire vertical or horizontal set of tiles as you navigate the room. To attack an enemy, all you have to do is slide through or into them, but what you don't want to do is end up in a square that is within the proximity of any of the enemies, because after you move, they will get their chance to move and they'll move to the square next to you and then kill you. This ends up executing as a modified version of chess, but here your only piece is the rook, and you're up against an army of kings. To make this gameplay a little more complicated, they've added in 2 different power-ups that you can use to solve these room puzzles. The first item that you find is an enemy freezer, and that'll allow you to take a move or two without the enemies moving, so you can quickly get around a corner or you can quickly kill the enemy. The second item you receive is a move modifier, which allows you to put a pivot point in your slide. So as you're sliding through a, say, horizontal plane, you'll be able to take a 90-degree turn and slide vertically. Both of these items are consumables, and one of the really cool features of this game is that if you solve a room more efficiently than what they planned for, you may have extra items, and those items carry over to the next level. In this way, the player is benefited by having success in the early levels of a stage. It makes the later levels easier because you have more items. In addition to your power-ups, there's also some enemy variety that keeps the game relatively fresh throughout. For instance, some of the enemies take 1 hit while some of the enemies take 2 hits. There are some security enemies that when you run into them at all, they damage you, but they also monitor 2 spaces in front of them, and if you end up in those spaces, you also get damaged. If you manage to make it all the way through all of the levels within a chapter, you end up at a boss, and the bosses in this game are relatively creative. Here, the rules can be a little bit variable. For instance, there's a boss that puts bombs on random tiles around you, and they're not based on the turn-based mechanics. They are based on time. So when you see those bombs, you have to very quickly navigate off of them, or else you'll take damage. This makes a very cool boss mechanic because not only do you have to think strategically and turn-based, but you also have to think very quickly. While I definitely enjoyed the graphical style being pixel art, and the soundtrack is amazing, and all of the gameplay mechanics seem to be in order here, it's not all sunshine and rainbows for Red Ronin. The game's story takes place in a cyberpunk world, or at least it's pseudo-cyberpunk. The problem with the story is that the entire thing is delivered via text, and that text is a little bit convoluted, a little bit confusing, but also was very easy to just kind of skip through. It seemed somewhat uninteresting to me as the player. While I did get the gist of what was going on, I found the story to be relatively uninteresting for what I was doing in the game. Beyond the story, Red Ronin has two problems, and that is length and depth. While I haven't beat this game, the level layout seems to show that there's 4 or 5 chapters in the game. By my estimation, that would mean that this game is only maybe half a dozen hours long at most. In addition to that, while I think the 2 power-ups and the enemy variety does create a pretty veritable gameplay, I would have liked to see more depth in this game. In honesty, both of these 2 criticisms that I have of the game are pretty positive criticisms. It means that I've been drawn into the game and I'd like to play here longer, and I'd like to play with more toys within the game. I think this developer has done an amazing job of creating a game, and I really look forward to any sort of DLCs or updates or sequels that they may have in the future, but for now this game is a little bit short and it's a little bit shallow. My overall take, though, is that that shouldn't scare anybody off from playing this game. If you're interested in this game and you think it looks good to you, then you probably will like it. I've enjoyed my time here. I will probably end up finishing this game at some time, and I really encourage this developer to keep working on what they're doing because they've created a good recipe here. You don't have to take my word for it, though. There is a demo up on Steam. The game does come out on March 16th, 2021, but that demo is available for you to download right now. Go check it out for yourself. Highly encourage this one. I think you're going to like it.
If you've liked this video, well then like this video. And if you'd like to find out about more great games that just haven't got enough attention, take a look at my channel where I specialize in finding great indie hidden gems. Thanks for hanging out with me, and until next time, this has been Pixel.